All right, and last year, for the very first time, Kenya and France had the first business symposium that took place in Paris, that was in France, and it actually did attract 2,500 delegates from both Kenya and France. And this year, the same is happening, but this time, for the first time, we're going to be having the business symposium coming to the African continent. Kenya is one of the countries hosting this business symposium, as well as Tunisia in North Africa and Ivory Coast in West Africa. There's quite a lot that we can expect, of course, from this business symposium. And we would like to get into a conversation to find out exactly what France has for the African continent in terms of investment. And joining us to have that discussion right now, we've got Thierry Dubus, who is the marketing communication consultant, and he is actually one of the key people putting together this symposium together with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA, which is the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, as well as the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's good to have you in studio. So France has picked interest in Africa. Some people would actually say we've not seen much of France from the colonial times, so why now?
Why now?
Yeah.
There's actually quite a good answer for this. France has been in Africa since the colonial times, as you say, but let's say the natural was to be in West Africa because of the language. It's long overdue, let's say, and this is where things are happening now, which is why France has decided to have one of their stops on this tour in Kenya. Yeah, as you mentioned, it starts out in Ivory Coast, and then the business people from France split between Tunisia and Kenya. Okay. And they come for business opportunities. They come to learn about the market, and they come to network with Kenyan firms.
Okay, so there are quite a number of businesses, French businesses in Kenya, but we cannot say the same for Kenyan businesses in France. I guess you could say it favors more of the French in Africa than African businesses in France. But how best do you think we can grow these business relationships between the African continent and France?
Well, you do. It is true. There is an imbalance of trade between the two countries, and I'd say, unfortunately, it is a bit of something we see often between Africa and the Occidental world, more or less.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone now is looking for growth. Africa is one of the places, and everybody is expecting to create partnerships in manufacturing, tourism, so whatever it be, to try and regulate this balance a little bit. Yeah. I don't know what else to tell you about this, because there are already manufacturers, French manufacturers, that are in Kenya. For example, Peugeot now, which has come back and are now starting to produce cars. The ball is starting to roll, and France has to come and grab the opportunities.
All right, just like you're saying, the ball is starting to roll. But what are some of the opportunities that Kenyans can tap into in France?
That's a good question, but I would like to answer. I think French people have more to gain by coming here. For example, some of the subjects we'll be treating is how to go about business in East Africa, in East African community, because it's bigger than Kenya, actually. So, in a way, it's so different to West Africa. The French businessmen are coming here to learn how to go about the corridors of business in East Africa and mostly Kenya. So how can Kenyans benefit? Well, come to the event, do the networking. There will be some B2B meetings planned through what do you call it, an application. You register, we will send you questions, you will see which firms are coming, and come and meet the people, CEOs, MDs, etc., who are coming of these firms.
I'm curious to know what kind of firms have shown interest in coming to invest in Kenya, because we've already seen the manufacturers already coming in. You mentioned Peugeot, but what other firms have shown interest in coming to invest in Kenya? Fashion,
Well, there are some companies that have registered. Well, for example, if we look at the sponsors, we have a bank, Société Générale, which has, I hear, very recently had an acceptation of them doing business here. So they're one of the major sponsors. So the banking industry, of course. As I say, the manufacturing, there are many possible outcomes of that. Not only cars. Tourism, I mean, there are different ways of doing tourism than, for example, animal parks and wildlife, yeah? They're coming, those are some of the opportunities also, because there will be experts coming and say how they develop tourism in places that didn't seem to be obvious for it. We will be going, we have the CEO of, the MD, sorry, of iHub who's coming to talk about how to develop apps and not be scared of the digital world, let's say, for SMEs, yes. So people from France will be bringing, but like I say, I think there's a lot for them to learn here, yeah.
All right. There's a lot for French businesses to learn from Kenya, but, you know, Kenya is a land of opportunity, and they say there are some reports that indicate Kenya is one of the most attractive markets in East Africa. Is this one of the reasons that has prompted France to pick interest in Kenya particularly?
Of course, of course. Like I said, this is where it's happening now, and they don't want to miss the boat, basically.
All right. Going forward, what do you hope that Kenyan businesses can be able to take away from the symposium that's coming up on the 5th and 6th of October?
Well, if we just go about how the symposium works, it's a lot of, okay, it's basically in three parts, yes. There's the learning part, more or less, where we will have talks from, well, some political people, although today it's a bit difficult because we're going to be right in between the two elections on the 5th and 6th.
Right.
So that's a bit of a problem, but we will have some political speakers. We will have CEOs in banking, like I said, in digital media, in tourism. There will also be, how could I say, a little Ipsos is coming as a research company with Sagacé, a French firm, and they will talk about the rising middle class. So what can they take out of it is basically come, do the networking again. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but the idea is to grow businesses, create partnerships, okay? So there's a learning part, then there's a practical part, which will be workshops that will be around those talks, okay? A more practical way, where again, we have CEOs who will have a very small speak, but they will exchange with the rooms. So it's a way of being practical of how to do business in East Africa, but also how to merge companies, perhaps, or do partnerships. And there's a third part, like I said, which is the B2B. So that's how they can gain. They come, they see the sector in which they're interested. There will be something for everybody.
For everybody.
Agriculture, renewable energies, banking. There's quite a few subjects.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Thierry. We do appreciate the time taken to come speak to us about Kenyan and French business. And the symposium is going to be happening between the 5th and the 6th of October this year. That's going to be here in Nairobi. It's also concurrently going to be happening in Kenya, in Tunisia, and in Ivory Coast. And so we look forward to those business opportunities. We'll now take